Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and demystify the future of sustainable real estate. Now, when I say green building, you're probably picturing, some brand new futuristic glass and solar eco tower, right? But here's the wild truth. The most sustainable building might actually be the one that's already standing.
We've got a lot of fascinating ground to cover today. Here is our agenda. 1. Power of adaptive reuse. 2. What is a passive house? 3. Smart buildings and efficiency. 4. Economics of green real estate. 5. Preparing for the storm. And 6. The circular economy. We're going to trace the story of a building literally from the ground up.
So, Section 1. Power of adaptive reuse. Rethinking the foundation. Let's start by totally challenging a common misconception. What is the greenest building? Honestly, think about it for a second. You probably imagine highly engineered marble covered in plants. But what if the absolute greenest building isn't new at all? As former American Institute of Architects President Carl Elefante famously said, the greenest building is the one that is already built. Here's the kicker. Building a brand new energy-efficient structure can actually take anywhere from 10 to 80 years just to offset the negative climate impact of its initial construction. On the flip side, reusing an existing building typically produces 50 to 75% less embodied carbon than starting from scratch. To really wrap our heads around why, we have to look at operational carbon versus embodied carbon. Operational carbon is just your day-to-day energy, keeping the lights on, running the AC. But embodied carbon? That's the heavy toll baked in before the ribbon is even cut, the materials, the manufacturing, and all that heavy machinery. Looking at this timeline, you can see how embodied carbon hits the atmosphere before anyone even steps foot inside. It is a massive upfront hurdle. So tearing down a perfectly good structure just to build a green one kind of defeats the whole purpose, doesn't it? For a super cool real-world example, look at the Multnomah County Library Operations Center out in Portland. Instead of building from scratch, they repurposed an old Safeway grocery store. By saving that existing structure, they achieved a staggering 66% reduction in embodied carbon compared to a new build. 66%. Moving on to Section 2. What is a passive house? Redefining comfort. Okay, imagine a house that stays perfectly comfortable year-round with almost zero traditional heating or cooling. By combining the core pillars of a passive house, super insulation, airtight construction, high-performance triple-glazed windows, and balanced mechanical ventilation with heat recovery, you essentially build a giant thermos. It leads to this amazing no-furnace concept, where ultra-low-energy homes are heated just by tempered ventilation air and literally your own body heat. But you can't just slap a passive house label on a building. You have to actually prove it. To get certified, the building has to pass rigorous diagnostics, like the blower door test. This literally measures the air tightness of the structure to make absolutely sure there are zero drafts or hidden heat leaks. Next up, Section 3, Smart Buildings and Efficiency, Operating with Intelligence. Once our building is standing, we have to operate it smart. Think about hybrid work today. Most office buildings are half empty, yet they're still heated and lit on these rigid schedules. Well, by using AI sensors for occupancy analytics, meaning you only supply air when people are actually in the room, a building can save 7 to 44% on HVAC energy alone. And AI doesn't stop there. It can enable predictive maintenance, slashing equipment downtime by 30 to 50%. In modern real estate, real-time building performance data is basically the new oil for driving executive decisions and ESG reporting. Section 4, Economics of Green Real Estate, the Financial Imperative. All that operational efficiency we just talked about, it bridges perfectly into the hard economics. The real estate sector is responsible for roughly 37% of global carbon emissions. Because of that massive footprint, tracking ESG performance is absolutely no longer just a nice-to-have PR stunt. It has become a core fiduciary duty for institutional investors. And the financial upside is undeniable. Recent research shows that LEED-certified Class A office buildings achieved an 11% higher rent and significantly lower vacancy rates compared to non-certified spaces. Tenants literally want to pay for these healthy, efficient spaces. So we're seeing this massive divergence in the market. The green premium versus the brown discount. Properties are either capturing a green premium, where folks pay extra for high performance, or they're getting hit with a severe brown discount. We're talking 10 to 20% value reductions for inefficient buildings as they face regulatory penalties and run the very real risk of becoming entirely obsolete, stranded assets.
Which brings us to Section 5, preparing for the storm, climate readiness. That exact risk of obsolescence leads us outside the building.
We literally have to prepare for the storm. Just relying on property insurance isn't cutting it anymore. Premiums are forecast to skyrocket 22% by 2040, thanks to extreme weather like floods and wildfires. To survive, buildings must physically adapt with resilient designs, like flood-resistant structures or green roofs for stormwater management. It's the only way to maintain liquidity and survive strict new local emissions caps like New York's Local Law 97.
Finally, Section 6, the circular economy beyond cradle to grave. Get this. Globally, we extract over 100 billion tons of materials every single year. The construction industry uses roughly half of them, and shockingly, wastes up to 60%. To fix this waste crisis, we have to totally ditch the linear, cradle-to-grave mindset of just extracting, building, and demolishing. We need a cradle-to-cradle approach where buildings are designed for future disassembly, acting as material banks. We're even seeing the rise of material passports, digital records for every component in a building so they can be tracked and reused with zero waste.
Even your choice of materials makes a huge difference. Swapping out high-emission steel and concrete for a fully timber structure can reduce upfront carbon by 39%. But to pull all this off, we're going to see a massive green jobs boom. We need hundreds of thousands of newly skilled workers, retrofit coordinators, HVAC techs, building science experts. In the UK alone, renovation programs are expected to create over 200,000 jobs, and surveys show 90% of workers in some sectors are totally willing to retrain for these decarbonization roles. So, as the world races towards strict net zero targets and extreme efficiency, the writing is clearly on the wall. The ultimate question for you, whether you're an investor, a tenant, or a builder, is simple. Will your building be a stranded asset or a sustainable solution? Is the space you occupy ready for the future or stuck in the past? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it gives you a powerful new lens to look at the spaces you live and work in every single day.